In this video, we'll introduce Rhino's use of the conventional 4-viewport layout and see how each viewport relates to each other as well as the geometry you create. As a reminder, we have two basic types of viewports, one called ortho and the other called perspective. So the ortho viewports are your basic top, right, and front views. These are viewed straight on with no distortion. The perspective viewport shows your model in a realistic, real-world 3D manner. So the ortho viewports are best used for accurate measuring and aligning, while the perspective viewport is best used to get critical and realistic feedback for your design. So one thing to note is you have only one active viewport at a time, so Rhino knows what you're looking at and what you want to modify. So you activate each viewport just by clicking its label. So here right now we're on active in perspective. Another cool way is we can double-click that same little tag and go full screen. And then just double-click it again and go back to the original 4. And that works with all of these. Anytime you see a viewport, you can just double-click once, double-click again, and you just revert right back. Now there's a new feature in Rhino 5. It's got the little pull-down arrow, so it's a little easier to find because you see the arrow. And there's lots of different modes, changing of views, moving of cameras, turning grids on and off, etc. Lots of features there. Some of these are also duplicated on the menus and some of the toolbars, but this is good to know they're here. We even have options as obscure as splitting the viewport, so I'll just show you that. This is rarely used, but you can come down to split horizontal, vertical, and then whatever current viewport gets chopped in half. And you might want to move these around, little dividers. You can mess it up pretty easily. Another little way to mess this up is by accidentally clicking and dragging. We're looking into the great beyond here. Some of the beginners will try to snap these in, and it gets to be kind of painful when you have multiple ones accidentally moved out. So let's show you where to fix those. We're going to go to the Viewport Layout tab up here. It's probably the quickest way to do it. And the second icon is just show all 4 viewports back to the original. Really handy. I use that all the time. Another problem people run into is by panning and zooming and just getting that center kind of not where you expect it to be. So just a quick, easy way to get this back to where you expect. You can just click any item or all of them and go to the Set View, Zoom Selected. Not only is that recentered everything, that's your new center of rotation too. It's actually very handy. Now I'd like to show you one of my favorite features, and this is kind of a caveat. It works best if you have multiple monitors, otherwise it's just kind of getting in the way. So here's a new way to launch this command. There's several kind of buried in, but I like just going down this tab button at the bottom, and we'll say New Floating Viewport. And what's going to happen is it's going to take the current viewport, which is perspective, I can tell by the label, and just make a copy. So these are independent, even though they've got the same name, so I can just do different pans and zooms. Now, you're saying, why do I want to cover up my work? This is the best for dual monitor. You just take this over and you could snap it full screen. And so that could be a great way to have an overall view, while on the other perspective, back on the first screen, you could be zooming in and checking out other stuff. So let's close that since we only have one monitor. Finally, a lot of people like to have their views perfectly aligned. I'm not a big fan of it, but it's critical for some extremely mechanical types of design. So we'll notice here that these are kind of by default fairly in alignment. I'm going to screw them up just a little bit. I have one zoomed in, one zoomed out, one moved over. Now I have to pick one of the viewports to be the master. We're going to go to Viewport Layout tab and then pick Synchronize the Views. So what happens is all the other views will be perfectly aligned and the same scale. Of course, until you move or pan either of those. But you can actually lock this operation. So the right click on that same button will toggle them. Now if I happen to zoom in on this top view, look at the other views. That is pretty cool. So Rhino allows for total customization of any single or combination of multiple viewports. This customization includes the viewport size, its location, its name, and the view of your model. However, the basic 4-viewport mode is universal standard for a good reason, so it's probably best to stick with this convention during your initial introduction to the software.